This is part 3 of how I made $500,000 in a year. Sorry it took me so long to get this video out. I had a really tough week. I don't want to talk about it in real time because I'm on state parole and I don't want there to be like legal implications, but ask me a few months from now, remember, and I'll tell the story because it's some wild shit happened this last week and I'm just kind of coming out of it. I had some friends save me and yeah, I'm doing better. So this is part 3 of when I was selling drugs and eventually I got busted by the feds and I went and did 5 years in prison. And after this video, I want to start focusing on prison stories from the perspective of not being a tough guy, because I'm certainly not a tough guy. I'm crazy, undoubtedly so. But there's a discernible difference between tough and crazy, and often people can't tell the difference. But I'm crazy. I've been through tough things, but I'm definitely not tough. And prison was terrifying for me. I want to talk about it in a humble, accessible way so you guys can really understand what I experienced in that fucking hellhole. It was horrible. And I also want to say one more thing. Like, people keep commenting that I'm lying, like, oh, you're a fucking liar, you're making stuff. I'm not making anything up. Maybe sometimes, like, I get details, like, a little twisted or out of place. And, I mean, come on. I shot heroin for 20 years. My memory's, like, not the best. But I think I do a pretty good job considering. So, for anyone saying that, I mean, if anybody knows me personally, I mean, you already know all this shit's true, but there's a lot of random people that are probably like, wow, this guy's just making up weird, wild stuff. But no, this is really what happened. So, part 3 of the story. Anyway, sorry about the rant. So, in the last video, we talked about how I'd gotten arrested, and I'd signed a confession saying that it was my dope and that I was going to distribute it in exchange for them letting Jenny go. But they let both of us go. And in all my years of selling drugs and being involved with drug people, I've never heard of somebody getting arrested with a half pound of heroin by LA sheriffs and then being let go unless they're a fucking informant. So on the way home, Jenny and I were very conscientious of that. And, you know, there was this like foreboding feeling because we knew that something bad was about to happen. I mean, we had just been arrested with weight and they let us go. Now, we thought it was like a search and seizure issue. You know, we're like, they shouldn't have searched our car, or like they tricked us by saying that they were going to get a warrant. They like coerced us. We thought, you know, had this like junky optimism with it. We get back to Santa Barbara, and at the time I had 3 runners. So I had 3 people working below me, and I'd have Diana's Picer runner bring me a pound on Monday and bring me a pound on Friday. And then I would split it up, I'd take what I needed, and I'd give it to these 3 runners. 2 of them are pretty inconsequential, but one of them I was pretty close with. He was like 3 or 4 years younger than me. We'll call him Ben for the sake of the story. Not his real name, but we'll call him Ben. And I'm just giving that name because he's a peripheral character, but you know, he kind of plays a big part in all this. So when we're driving back, we're pretty much like, we shouldn't tell anybody about this because it makes me look like a rat, for one thing. And for 2, you know, we're going to have to get more heroin somewhere if people are thinking that I just got busted and I'm kind of just still trying to navigate that world. Nobody's going to want to deal with me and we're going to get cut off. So I get back and I tell everybody that I'd gotten jumped in LA. I'm like, I got jumped going down there to pick up a pound. I didn't tell them I got arrested. Didn't tell them I got caught with a half pound. And I told one of Jenny's friends to take me down there because I called Diana and I said, hey, I got arrested last night. And she's like, I think the runners are rad, eh? And I was like, you know, and I never in a million years would have suspected that Diana was the snitch. You know, I've been dealing with her for years. She was always telling me, we're connected to the Mexican mafia. If you ever get busted, keep your fucking mouth shut. And turns out that she's the one that was the rat. Everything's so paradoxical with the federal system. It's like they bust dealers and then the dealers give up who's below them. You know, in just conventional thought, you'd think if you get busted with drugs, you tell them the person above you. The purpose of this is they're trying to bolster their conspiracy because they have one target at the top of the conspiracy. So every conviction, even if it's a minor player, helps put the person at the top of that indictment away for life. And that's exactly what happened with my case, but I'll get more to that soon. We told this girl that we had gotten jumped and that she needed to give us a ride because Diana says, come back down. I'm not going to use that runner. And I'll give you, I can give you a ½ pound. That's all I can get. So it was going to be another ½ pound. I said, okay. So I go down with this girl. We're driving like a, I don't know, BMW, I think. We drive down and we meet at Avenue 50, either 52nd. I think it's Avenue 52nd by Highland Park in East LA area. We were going to meet at this Food for Less parking lot. So we drive down there. And this girl that's driving me is a dope fiend too. And it's all under the pretense that I'm going to get her well as soon as we get down there. So we drive down there and she's sick the whole time, driving, bitching at me. We get there, I call Diana, I say, okay, I'm here. And she goes, okay, it's going to be about an hour. I'm like, what the fuck? She was never like that. She never made me wait. So during that time, during that hour that I was waiting for Diana, I walked around the Food for Less. And I was like looking at the parking lot and I was looking at all the cars. I'm like, okay, are there cops? Are there cops? I'm looking at every car. We were parked next to a Cadillac Escalade that was completely tinted and it was on 24s. And I almost looked in the window, but I thought it could be some gangbangers and I'm not trying to get shot in East LA by looking in somebody's car like that. So I didn't look in that car. So about an hour goes by, Diana comes and she's like driving a van. Now, I had the grocery bag with the pet food thing with the little, false bottom. And I had it full with $4,000, I think is what I was getting a ½ pound for. I think it was $8,000 for a full pound, so $4,000 for a half. So I had the money stuffed in there. I get in her van. She has a grocery bag, same thing, false bottom, but she has the ½ pound in that grocery bag. Sitting there, and I'm like, hey, what's up? She looks at me, and she's looking at me weird. I give her the money, she hands me the bag, and she goes, you're going to be okay, mijo. And there's a tear coming out of her eye. And I'm like, fuck. I knew instantly that she said that she was the rat. I should have known before. It just didn't make sense that my drug dealer's setting me up. So I grabbed the bag, and I'm like, okay. I'm going back to the car. I'm expecting that cops are going to swarm around me at any second. So I go back. So she leaves. Diana leaves. I get back. As soon as she told me that, I just like grabbed the bag and got out of the car. So I go back to this girl that's driving me. And I'm like, we need to go. And she's like, fuck that. You had me come down here and you said you were going to get me well. And I'm not going anywhere until you give me a shot. I'm like, oh my Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. Whatever. So I take some of the dope out. It's in a balloon, they're in multicolored balloons. I take one of the balloons, I bite it open, I put it on an upside down can, I cut the can apart so I use it as a makeshift cooker. I cook her up a shot real quick. Stir up the rig and I draw up the shot and she's sticking her arm out. I stick the needle in her vein. Right as I register and see the blood, she's like, cops. And I'm like, what? And I look up in the rear view mirror and the side view mirrors, and there's probably 30 cops surrounding us, maybe more. And I'm like, fuck. And they're like, get out of the car. And I already had the shot registered. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to jail anyway. I'm going to keep giving you the shot. So I just keep pushing the plunger down. Hey, get out of the car. I'm pushing the plunger down. And I tell her, I go, listen, I just got arrested a couple days ago. And I'm really sorry to put you in this position. Just say you didn't know that I had the dope, and I'll take all the blame for it. I'm really sorry. She's like, what? Oh my God. I'm just like, just listen to what I say. Get out of the car. So I get out of the car, and I have the needle in my hand. And they're like, get on the ground. And I'm like dropping to my knees, and I still have the needle in my hand like this. And they're like, drop the needle. I'm like, okay. And they tackle me. And I look, and there's FBI and DEA agents, with like the gold emblazoned on their jackets, jumping out of the Escalade. Sure enough, that was the feds in that car. And they cuff me, and one of the sheriffs that arrested me the first time is like, damn, didn't we just see you the other day? And now the feds are yelling at me, and they're like, we're dead, motherfucker. We're dead. They kept saying, we are dead. Like, it made no, I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? We're dead, motherfucker. And they just kept saying that. And I'm like cuffed, and I'm like, what does dead mean? And they're like, Drug Enforcement Agency detective, motherfucker, means you're going to prison for 20 years. I'm just like, oh, great. All right. So they they bring me in the Escalade with this girl, and they're asking us for statements. Now this time, no statements. I'm not going to sign another confession. I'm not going to be tricked into it. At this point, I just kind of surrender to the idea that we're going to jail, right? The only thing that I said is that I'm like, she had nothing to do with this. And that's all I said. And so they asked me if I would do an interview with them. They're driving me in the back of the Escalade, and they take me back to the same substation that I went to the first time. And I said that I couldn't talk without an attorney. Same situation second time. I'm in this substation for like 4 or 5 hours. 6 in the morning, they let us go. Let us go again. I just got called to half-pound now twice, this time by the feds. So I didn't know what was going on, and I asked this girl, I'm like, hey, did you say anything to them? And she's like, no. So now I'm definitely like, I have no idea what's going on. I've gotten arrested twice in like 48 hours, and both times they'd let me go. So I go back to Santa Barbara, and now everything's fucked, you know? We can't get any more. Now I for sure know that Diana did it, so I never call her again. So I'm call a bunch of attorneys, because I'm like asking them, I'm like, well, I got arrested and they let me go. So some attorneys didn't know what they were talking about. They're like, well, if they let you go, it means they didn't have a strong enough case. Some attorneys were like, well, since the feds were involved, they have 7 years to file an indictment. They're probably just collecting evidence for the grand jury to indict you, and then they're going to get you. I heard that from a couple cops, but of course in my dope fiend delusional mind, I just wanted to think that they fucked up somehow. So around the same time, now remember Luke, we got the $70,000 thing, SAS, nowhere to be found, and my entire pipeline of making revenue has just come to like a complete halt. My Molly Connect looks like he's burned me for $70,000. I got this guy Luke who's staying at a hotel in Santa Barbara freaking the fuck out. I tell him I got busted. I'm like, look, man, I got busted. I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, oh my God. I'm like, look, I have all these lithographs. I don't know if I talked about how I was laundering money with art lithographs in this video, or it might have been the Al Profit video, but I had a couple $100,000 worth of lithographs at my house. So I'm trying to give him lithographs, and he almost took them as payment. And we went to like try to get them appraised, and you know, they're like, well, the prices are subjective and it could be worth this, and he just didn't want to have to liquidate this shit, so he didn't take that as payment. So this guy Luke knew my dad somehow, and I think he had met him somehow. He had his phone number. He ends up calling my dad and telling him that I owe him all this money for the drug dealing. I'm telling that I'm a drug dealer and that there was a drug deal gone wrong and that I owed him all this money. And my dad's like, why is this guy calling me? Well, I call Luke back and I'm like, look, dude, you fucking just crossed the line. You call my dad. If I ever see him, I'm going to fucking murder you. I'll never talk to him again. That was it. I mean, I felt like if the debt, like if he's going to bring that to my dad, he just totally crossed the line, and that's it. Now, he didn't say anything. He was being, he's just like, he could tell I was so mad about it. I probably would have killed him in that instance because I had so much anger built up for just getting busted and the fact that SAS burned me. So around this time, I start going down to LA from Santa Barbara. And I start just going on the street, just trying to reverse engineer how I got the Connect to begin with. I start dealing with Pisces downtown LA, buying balloons, and eventually like they lead me to somebody, and then I get to a bigger person, and all of a sudden I'm back in the same setup that I was to begin with. I find another Connect that's giving me big things of multicolored balloons again. No idea what's going on with the feds. I have no idea what's going on with SAS. But within like maybe a month, I got busted. Those 2 times that I got busted were in November of 2008. And so now it's probably January, and I'm back to selling heroin, not dealing with SAS. So that's the only thing I'm selling is heroin, and I'm kind of living in fear, but because I think that this indictment might be coming. But that fear dissipated very quickly after I started getting like another solid connection, and it seemed like nothing was happening. I mean, I'm doing business as usual, nothing's going down. So now it's like January. So Sass liked to hang out with like strippers and these other girls in Santa Barbara that I still had some contact with at the time. So I kind of put a bounty out on him. And I basically told anybody, if you can put me in the same room with Sass, I'll give you $5,000. And I told that to a bunch of people that were mutual acquaintances that might actually see him. And I didn't hear anything for a long time. I'd bought some guns. I had like a 32 Cobra, I had a 45, I had a 38 Special. I had like a gun connect at the time. So I just, I had a bunch of money, so I was just buying toys, and guns were some of the stuff that I bought. One night, I get a call. It's like midnight. And incidentally, I'm on 180 milligrams of methadone, including what the clinic's giving me and me buying take-homes. It's averaging about 180 milligrams a day. I don't know about anyone else, but methadone makes me fat as fuck. I went from being like a 120-pound junkie, like I am in those videos that I posted, like when I'm in my early 20s, to being like 230 pounds of like actual fat, because you go into this like state of constipated paralysis, and methadone makes you gain a lot of weight. So I'm like fucking obese at this point. I remember I went to go buy needles at the exchange. At the pharmacy, I went to go buy a 10-pack, and I heard somebody go, "Hey, is that Ryan? Is that Ryan Leone?" And I heard their friend go, no, that guy's way too fat. And I was just like, said it right in front of me. I was a balloon. I was like, just this fat methadone piece of shit. One night, it's around midnight, and I get a call from this girl I knew that I'd put that bounty out on Sass. And she says, "I know where he is. He's at this bar in Goleta. Goleta's this little town right outside of Santa Barbara. He's at this bar. Will you give me the $5,000? I was like, yeah, if I go there and he's there, I'll give you 5 G's. She's like, cool. So I tell Jenny, I'm like, come on, Sass is at this bar. She's like, all right, cool. So she jumps, we go in my Chevy Malibu. I had like an 08 Chevy Malibu. And same car I got busted in. And so we jump in the car, she grabs a 32 Cobra. It's like a military police gun, I think. I don't know shit about guns, but it's a little gun, In the documentary, there's a lot of footage of all this stuff. She grabs the gun, she puts it in her purse. So we get in my car, and we go to this bar. We pull into the back parking lot, and sure enough, he's standing there, and he's talking to some girls, and he's like smoking cigarettes with them. And I see him, and I'm like so angered to see him, because he's just laughing, drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, that I start talking shit to him. I'm like, hey, motherfucker. And I open my car door, but I don't put the car in park. So I'm like getting out of the car, and I'm like standing, like I have my foot on the brake, and I'm like talking shit. And then I kind of leap out to try to, like he sees me talking shit. So he starts running towards me. Well, I get out of the car, and the car starts moving. So like he's running towards me, and my car's moving, and I had to like dive back in the car and like throw it into park. But it allowed him a chance to catch up to me. And like he's like some chubby guy, but I'm like equally as fat at this point because of the methadone. So I like get out, I like waddle towards him all fat, and he comes, and I try to punch him, and he just takes me down, right? I'm so fat I can't even fight, right? So he takes me down, and we start fighting. Like we're on the ground, I'm punching him, he's punching me, we're kind of like rolling on top of each other. Probably look ridiculous, two fat guys just going at it at this bar parking lot. And he starts beating me up. He starts getting me, right? I'm bleeding, and Jenny gets out of the car, and she gets the gun, and she goes up to him, and she just goes, bam, hits him right in the jaw. His jaw literally like disaligned, like it went like that. I saw it, like you could literally hear it, and he's just screaming in agonizing pain, blood everywhere. We're both beat up, and now she hit him, like she like literally hit him like right there with the gun, and he's screaming. She probably broke his jaw. Now all of his friends that are in the bar come out, and they're like, what's going on? Jenny has the gun. She's pointing it at them, and she's like, back the fuck off. And they're like, whoa, put the gun down. And she's like, no, this dude owes us $70,000. We're running out of money. at the time. We probably only have $60,000 in our safe, and we're used to having $200,000-300,000 cash. Like, everything got fucked up from that, from getting busted, just a lot of bad luck all at once. So we're, you know, and there's a possibility that I might be getting indicted. So that money's very important. And so one of his friends tries to be like a peacemaker with us, and he's like, look, we have a grow right now. We're just getting ready to yield the bud. We can square you up with bud. We'll give you 70 pounds, 70 pack to clear it up. I'm like, cool. And this is like a guy that I've known for a while that was like one of our mutual friends, and he's kind of vouching for him. So we agreed on that, and I left. Stupid decision. I should have just taken that guy with me and made him pay me right there and then, because I never fucking heard from him again. They burned me. But I think Jenny broke his jaw. So around the same time, so, you know, now Sass, that's it. Like, our relationship's over. And by the way, when we were fighting, he was like, I know you're an informant for the Fed. So that, like, it had gotten out somehow that I'd gotten arrested and that I wasn't in jail. So he thinks this. Now, my theory on him is that, and what I've heard from other people, is that he actually got busted and he was trying to deflect that with me. And he had actually flipped for them. I have no idea where that guy is now. I heard he's up growing weed in San Jose these days, but I don't know. I never heard from him again. Luke, that whole thing came to an end because he called my dad. And my runner, Ben, who I talked about earlier, starts getting really shady with me. He'll owe me like $5,000. It'll be the day that I'm supposed to pick up the money. He won't call me. Phone goes straight to voicemail, you know, turn his phone off. Then I'll hear from him a week later. I lost the money and I only have $1,000, but like, can you front me more? And I keep giving him more to try to get him back because he used to be so reliable. So I think he ends up, I want to say he owes me $7,000. And he comes to me and he says, listen, I need one more quarter pound. I need it just so that I can get back to where I need to be so that I can actually pay you. I'm like, okay, cool. I give it to him. And he's looking really bad at the time. Like, he's really into shooting coke. He's getting really skinny. And he disappears on me. So again, same thing. I put a bounty out on this guy. He owes me like, you know, over 10,000 now. And or something like that. 8, 9, whatever it was. He owed me a lot of money. And so somebody calls me one night, same thing, girl, midnight, same exact setup as before. And they're like, hey, I know he's staying at the Sunset Motel on Upper State, Santa Barbara. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I go, okay, what room? And she's like, I don't know what room, but I know he's at that hotel. So I'm like, okay. So Jenny and I roll up to this hotel, middle of the night. I go to the front desk and I get the the business card with the phone number on it. And I just go to my car and I start calling every single room. Like, I sit in the parking lot. I'm like, okay, 101, call the number, type 101 in, wait to see who picks up. Finally, I get to a room and he picks up. He's like, hello? And I'm like, hey, man, why do you keep burning me? And he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, listen, you're going to let me in the hotel, or I'm going to come and I'm going to bang on the fucking door and make such a scene that cops are going to come. And I guarantee you have something in there. You better fucking come, let me in and at least explain to me what's going on. So he's like, okay. So he's in, he's like on the second floor. So I go to the second floor and he opens the door and he's like in his boxers covered with sweat with like there's like some other guy in there in boxers covered with sweat, it literally looked like they just got done butt fucking or something. And I mean, whatever, to each their own. I had nothing against that, but I didn't know he was like that. And it was very clear that that's what was going on. Like, he's shooting coke in like some weird gay, passionate love affair with this other drug dealer guy that I know that I didn't think it was gay. And I'm just like, whoa, this is bizarre. So I start talking, I'm like, hey, what the fuck's up, man? He's like, oh man, I'm doing really bad. No. And he just keeps telling me lie after lie after lie. And so I'm like this guy and I just slap him. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Just hit him. I bitch slap him. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. I've given you chance after chance after chance. And I'm not that kind of guy. Like, I didn't punch him. And I felt bad even slapping him. And I remember, I'm like, give me your shoes. And he's like, my shoes? I'm like, yeah. I thought that if I took his shoes, that maybe like it would compel him to pay me. I'm like, I want the money by tomorrow and I'll give you your shoes back. So absurd looking back in retrospect on this. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? So anyway, so I end up, I think they had like an ounce of Coke or something, and I take that from them, and I end up leaving. And I remember I felt so guilty about slapping him. I called his mom, and I'm like, look, he's fucked up on drugs. If you can just put him in rehab, and you can like tell me that he's actually in treatment and getting better, then I'll squash the debt, because I'd rather see him get clean than keep doing what he's doing, because he's the kind of guy that's going to die. And she said, okay. So the next day after that, the very next day after that, I forgot to go into this whole thing about how I was trying to buy 40 acres to do an outside grow, and I had investors, and I had like people putting like seed money into this big outdoor grow. I'd gotten a fictitious business license. I was going to start a cannabis dispensary in Santa Barbara. I had all these plans to do all this stuff. And like, we had already rented a commercial lot in Santa Barbara. I'd already gotten the DBA from the government. I had my caregiver thing. I was going to start a dispensary. I was going to take what money I had made and put it into that industry so that I could try to turn my life around a little bit. I was getting sick of living this lifestyle. And I still didn't know what was going on the federal side of things. The very next day, I was just starting to deal with a new vendor, because I'm dealing with vendors that are going to help me open the club. People are going to get, this guy's going to give me 10 pounds. This guy, we're going to have all these different kinds of strains, and we're going to open a dispensary. Back then it was like the Wild West. So the next day, I was selling a pound that I had just gotten from a vendor to some lady that I didn't know. I don't even remember. I just remember that this is what was going on when this happened. I was selling her a pound that I'd gotten from a vendor. And I'm sitting in her car, and the iPhone 1 had just come out. This is in 2008. I get a call from a private number. And we're doing the transaction or whatever. I see that this private number left a voicemail. So she gets out of my car. I'm going back to my place. Jenny and I are having a little get-together. Remember I said I didn't bring anybody to my new place? At the end, all the people that were doing the medical marijuana stuff started coming over. It was like a pretty trustworthy group of people. It wasn't junkies or anything. And I think it was like season 6 of Lost. The season premiere of the show Lost was going on, and we were like having a party that night. So I sold the weed, and I'm driving home, and I listened to that message that I got from the private number. And it says, Mr. Leone, this is so-and-so from the Drug Enforcement Agency. You've been indicted on 2 counts, conspiracy to distribute heroin and possession with intent to sell heroin. You're looking at 10 years to life in federal prison. I suggest that you make arrangements to surrender and get an attorney and have them contact the U.S. Marshals, or we're going to come kick your fucking door down. It's exactly how he said it. I remember it was like all of the air just getting taken out of me at one time. It was just like, like, it was like getting a fucking gut shot real quick. And I was like in shock. I'm like, oh my God. I remember I went back to my place, and everybody's there getting ready to watch the, the season premiere of Lost. I got in there, and I'm just crying. Tears are streaming down my face. I'm like, everyone has to go. And everyone's like, what's wrong? I'm like, everyone has to go. And Jenny's like, what's up? And I'm like, man, they indicted me. And she's like, oh my God. I played her the message, and she starts crying, and she starts hugging me, and she's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know. So I end up calling an attorney, this guy, Robert Sanger. He was one of Michael Jackson's attorneys. His name's Bob Sanger, Santa Barbara. Best defense attorney you can get in Santa Barbara. I call him, tell him what's up. I'm like, okay, got busted twice, is what they're saying. And he's like, listen, it's probably going to be 10 years in federal prison or 5 5 or 10 years. I might be able to get it down to 5. I'm like, 5 years? You know, I always had this delusion that I was making enough money where I was invincible, where if I ever got caught, I'd be able to pay my way out of it. We're down to like not the kind of money that we used to have, for one thing. And my attorneys tell me there's no way to get out of it unless I snitch. It's the only way you can get under 5 years. And he tells me, he's like, that, and it's against my religion to cooperate. Fuck the feds, do not cooperate. And I was like, I'm not even considering cooperating. Wasn't even something that was on the table. The people that they would have wanted anyway were like close friends of mine. There's no fucking way that I would do that. And he told me, he's like, you should pay me. You know, I had to give him like $15,000 on retainer. It's like, and I'll call the U.S. Marshals and we'll arrange for your surrender. And he's like, we'll be able to get you some sort of equity bond. That's how they do it in the feds. It's not cash bail, it's like equity through a house. But I didn't know, they like never give you bail in the feds. My attorney just knew that that's the only way he could get me to go self-surrender. And I talked to Jenny about it, and I said, I think that I should turn myself in just so that there's one of us out here dealing with the dispensary, dealing with the money. I'm the guy, I should go. I'm the one indicted. If I don't turn myself in, they're gonna come raid our house. We have guns, we have money, we have drugs. You're gonna end up going to prison with me. I'll go surrender. And she's like, you know, we put some serious thought into it, and she's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. We got to handle this. I'm going to surrender. We had enough money too. I probably could have gone on the run, but I just decided not to complicate anybody's life around me, that it just needed to end with me. So I was going to turn myself in. And I decided to take a bunch of heroin up my ass with me and methadone, put it in balloons and smuggle it in there. You know, just in case I couldn't get bail. I'm on 180 milligrams of methadone. I was petrified that I'd get stuck in there and that I'd have to kick cold turkey, which is exactly what happened. And we're going to go into that in the next video. We'll go into what my methadone kick was like and what it was like when I first went in there. But, you know, that night we get these balloons ready to put up my ass to turn myself in. One of my best friends was turning 30 the next day. I gave him backstage passes to Coachella to go see Paul McCartney. You know, I always bought the backstage or VIP passes to all the festivals, and I was going to go to it, and I'm like, hey man, happy birthday. And he ended up driving me down to LA, and I did a speedball in the parking lot. I had all this shit packed in balloons in my ass, and you know, he started crying. You know, we got In-N-Out Burger. We got a 40-ounce drink. We get to this big federal building in downtown LA where the U.S. Marshals are, and my instructions were to go there and just say, hey, I'm Ryan Leone. I'm here to surrender. And I did a speedball. We hugged. We cried. And I turned myself in. And 3 months later, Jenny would be dead from a heroin overdose. And we can get into all that in the next video, which will be the first part of the prison stories, methadone. Thank you.